Okay, so from being a wildlife conservationist to doing some amazing artwork to working on so many lands across all of the Disney parks that create this magical bubble that we know and love, I am super excited to be talking to current Walt Disney World Imagineer Morgan Richardson. Hi everyone, welcome back to That Disney Girl. If you are new to the channel, what's up? My name is Alessa and you are watching one of the episodes of How to Become an Imagineer. And in this series, what we do is we talk to Imagineers and see what they did for the company and what advice they have for future Imagineers that want to get into theme park design, just so we can understand how this giant clock of Imagineering works and what we can do to get our hands in it. And today we are talking with Morgan Richardson, which, like I just said, he has had his hand in so many different projects across Walt Disney World. He is currently an Imagineer for the company and will continue to do amazing things for the company that we are going to have the pleasure and honor to experience. And it is because we have people like him who are so detail orientated and research driven that we're able to have these amazing lands and be able to be transported in such a way that we are whenever we enter any park at Walt Disney World. But of course, Morgan can definitely speak for himself, so let's bring him on to the show and welcome Morgan to the next episode of How to Become an Imagineer. Thank you so much again for being on the show. I'm very excited to be talking with you today. So for those who don't know who you are, this is Morgan, and Morgan is currently working at Walt Disney World Imagineering, which is super awesome. So like creating the magic we see today. I think your story is kind of interesting because it didn't start directly with like a job application so much. So I was kind of hoping you could talk to us about that competition that you did. It's called a Imaginations Design Competition, and just what that sort of was, and then if you could also discuss after just kind of like where that spark came from to know that you wanted to basically do like theme park design, and of course for many people Disney is like the top tier that you can get to.
Sure. Well, I mean, obviously the themed entertainment industry is quite large. There are zoos, museums, aquariums, parks all over the world, and all that is really part of the larger industry as a whole. And you know, I'm specifically at this point in my career working in theme parks at Walt Disney Imagineering, doing design work there. I personally got in through the Imaginations Design Competition, which is aimed at college age applicants. I mean, you have to be in an institute of higher learning, so you know you have to be in a college or going through your graduate school. And we actually, I mean, every once in a while we get a PhD candidate running through the program, which is pretty interesting. But I think that for anyone who is in college and they are interested in working at Walt Disney Imagineering, or at least coming in and getting an internship and having an amazing experience and coming out of it with a wonderful resume piece and portfolio pieces, then that's absolutely something that's you know, anyone interested in this should pursue. And you know, when I went through the competition, I happened to have already been in the industry for quite some time. I had been working in themed entertainment for 10 years, I think, by the time I got to grad school. And I had already known some people at Imagineering, and I spoke with them, and you know, I knew that was a goal already, and I just happened to do the competition because I had other classmates who were interested in doing it and asked me to be on their team, and so I should, sure, why not? You know, it should be fun. If anything will come out of it with a neat portfolio piece, sure, we'll do it. And we ended up being finalists, which was great. And so we got to come out to California, where I'm actually from, so it was actually kind of cool to come home and pitch our project to the Imagineers there, and now they're my colleagues, which is fun.
Amazing.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that for a lot of people who are interested in this type of work, people who are inquisitive tend to gravitate towards this stuff. People who have this thirst for knowledge and exploration, and who are inventive and creative, you know, the industry is a magnet for people like that. So I think that for anyone interested, if that kind of describes you in any way, this would really be a great outlet for somebody who is inherently creative and wants to learn and learn every day and work hard to make these amazing places where, you know, people get to come and they stand for decades, and you know, they're passed down through the heritage of our culture, right? You know, they stand the test of time, and that's what's so great about this work, is that you know, little decisions that you make in a design meeting in Glendale, California one day end up becoming reality a few years down the line for people for generations. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it must be amazing also for you to just see that, like, you see it like from inception to like then seeing just people like walk off the attraction or walk into the land and like see how amazed everybody is and how much joy that it brings to them, which I assume is probably the most rewarding thing.
I've been very fortunate. I've worked at companies before Walt Disney Imagineering where I had this experience as well. But I've had the pleasure and the honor of working on 11 of the 12 Disney parks around the world, and many of them, you know, on experiences or attractions or lands that have come to fruition and have opened, and seen guests come through them, millions of guests now. And you just kind of stand there at the exit and listen to what people are saying. And yeah, there's nothing more rewarding than that. I think that any ride designer or land designer will tell you the same thing, that there's nothing better than going back to a project that you had a hand in and watching guests go through it for the first time. I mean, in our line of work is so quickly paced, and it's so project based that oftentimes for many people, depending on what your role is, by the time a project opens, you're already on to something else. So sometimes it's a matter of revisiting an old project and putting yourself back in the mindset of like, wow, I remember a year ago when I was just like 24/7 working on this project, and now look, these families are getting to go through it, and it's a really special moment.
Yeah, I know, it's super cool. And also it's cool how like you worked on something but it gets passed off to someone else, then you get to go back and see like how that all came to be. But so you worked at other theme parks and other sorts of like themed entertainment design companies prior to joining Imagineering. And one of the ones, I think, what would you say that Cedar Fair Entertainment is probably the most like the one that you stayed at for the longest?
Sure. So the interesting thing about Cedar Fair is that I started. Well, let's just rewind a bit, and we'll get to Cedar Fair eventually. I started off as a performer, as a singer and a dancer, you know, working in Paramount Parks with the Nickelodeon intellectual property. So I was working with Nickelodeon, and you know, working on Nick stuff was amazing because I grew up watching all of the fantastic late 80s, early 90s Nickelodeon content on television. And you know, it's still a really big special part of me because it was a part of my childhood. And then as I grew older, it ended up being my segue into this career that I have now. The thing about that is that it was a part of Viacom, you know, which Paramount was also a part of. So Paramount had parks here in North America and Canada. And
Yeah, I was gonna say we have. I mean, I'm from Toronto, so we have. It was Paramount, but now it's Cedar Fair. But yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I worked for, you know, several years with Nickelodeon and then with Paramount, you know, and when all of those were purchased by the Cedar Fair company, I just stayed on. And what came of that was Cedar Fair had done a lot of things that they actually inherited, you know, when they bought Knott's Berry Farm. When Cedar Fair purchased the Knott's Berry Farm Park in Southern California, they had already been doing things like Halloween Haunt and these great Christmas events and holiday events and things like that. And the Paramount Parks really didn't know how to adapt super quickly to that. And they needed people who were there based in their individual parks to step up and start, you know, working creatively on these endeavors. And that's kind of how I ended up working on this stuff. And what's very different about working in a local park right? I'm not talking about a huge tourist destination park like, you know, the Walt Disney World Resort in Florida or the Universal parks or anything like that. You know, these local audience parks, they are often operating on much smaller budgets. They don't have dedicated design teams, you know, working on really, really big stuff. If they're going to mobilize and do something like a Halloween Haunt event, they're going to rely on the people that are already there working. And so, you know, being from the Bay Area in California, I was working out of California's Great America is what it's called now. And, you know, I ended up doing things like building an ice rink, which I had never done before, and nobody ever taught me how to do it, but they were just like, figure it out. Great. And so, you know, me and the team that I was working with kind of figured that out. We figured out how to do haunt mazes. We came up with these ideas and concepts, and basically I would write treatments and do little sketches, and they would get handed off to other people. But, you know, sometimes, most of the time, we carried it all the way to the end. I'd be there with a drill in my hand, building these things, doing the heavy lifting and the construction, and then, you know, operating it as well. So it was, and maintaining it is a huge part of a haunt, by the way. So that all gave me just incredible insight into what it takes to operate these types of attractions. And when you start to move up the ladder in the industry and in your career, and you start to work for, you know, companies that have, you know, more and more clout or do bigger and more elaborate projects, you end up taking that early experience, and it sort of forms who you are and the decisions that you make, especially as a designer. I think one of the most valuable things that you could do is work in high school or in college or whatever at a local amusement park or a theme park or a zoo or a museum or an aquarium or anything like that that relates to this, you know, type of work at all, or a theater. Because that experience is going to inform you as a designer. You always need to know how the end user is going to experience what that is, and it helps you make swifter, more concise decisions that are going to oftentimes end up being more successful in the end during the design phase.
And then, so since like with Cedar Fair, you're, like you said, you're kind of carrying it out the entire way through. Like you have a drill in your hand, you're maintaining, especially like throughout Haunt, you're maintaining the mazes, I guess, as it goes along. Did you, in your mind, have to like swap gears when you were starting to work on Disney projects, because you do have to, I guess, let go at a certain point, or you jump in at a point that isn't the beginning, or how did that change anything for you, or were you able to adapt easily?
I mean, being used to kind of having my hands in everything and working on much smaller project teams, you know, Disney is a large operation with executive levels that go all the way up to, you know, people who oversee the company and oversee multiple different aspects of the company. And we have to remember that Parks and Resorts is one part of the Walt Disney Company. And, you know, we are operating in a much larger way than, you know, these smaller local parks are. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the heart is gone out of it, or that the small team mentality is out of it. And I learned that pretty quickly, because these projects often start creatively with a very small team. And of course, that team needs to grow. It has to grow. And so you bring in more people who are subject matter experts on this, that, and the other thing. Like, man, I don't know how to do this. We got to get this person. And, you know, we bring them into the project. And then ultimately, you know, something like a land could have hundreds of people touching it at one point in time. And that's the real beauty of all of this, is that it doesn't belong to a single person. It belongs to everyone. And then when we turn the keys over, it belongs to the world. You know, and it belongs to the people. And I think that that's what's great about the line of work that I'm in, is that it's collaborative in many ways. And I can point at any given project and just get flashbacks of working with this person and working with this person, and it's like, oh, she's so talented, or like, this guy's just amazing at what he did and blew my mind every day. And I got to be a part of that. Mm-hmm. I don't have to point at that and be like, that's my this, or this is my that, because I don't think anyone can say that. And no Imagineer will tell you that. You know, that being said, I mean, it's a job, and like any job, you have great days and you have not so great days, and you have frustrations, and sometimes those frustrations are, as a designer and as an artist, you want to be creatively involved heavily in every little tiny aspect of something that you design, and in reality, that's just not the case. It's not feasible. You can't do that. You have to have faith in the people that you work with to say, like, yeah, that person's going to do it right. And I think that the most successful designers out there are able to do that. And I think that the people that struggle with it are often young people who haven't had the opportunity to work as collaboratively as it is required to work in this industry. And sometimes they have problems with control and turning things over to other people and having faith in other people. And I think if I was to give one piece of advice to people starting out in this type of work who haven't done it before, it's learn how to work with people, because that's key. The people around you are going to be able to help you find success.
It's very interesting, just because from the limited amount of Imagineers I've spoke to so far, you have all said the same thing, where like no one claims something as their own. You guys are always saying like, the work that this person did was so amazing, or I loved working with him or her, and always kind of like extending out to the greater team that did everything, which is interesting because it's definitely a pattern, and obviously something that you guys all have the same mentality, which is really lovely. From that, jumping to something that you actually, I feel like, do specifically you, which is kind of your artwork, which, I mean, anyone watching, it's like the colorful aspect of you is staring us in the face right now. So all of your artwork is very specific, which I think is great, because a lot of great Imagineers have very, like, a specific way in like the way that they produce any of their artwork. And I'm just kind of wondering, to start this off with the artwork discussion topic, where did that come from? Like these psychedelic pop art, comic book, but like something else. I don't even know how I would describe it. It's pretty crazy, but works.
Yeah. Well, I love all colors equally. It's hard for me when I'm coming up with an idea for a painting or a sketch or whatever to even narrow down a color palette. But I think that that's something that is sort of inherent to me, but also something that was learned over time. My love of color, right? And if anything, I'm a colorist. I am an artist who works with a lot of color, who always puts a lot of color into his work. And say for instance, concept art that I do for my job at the Walt Disney Company or anywhere else where I've worked is going to be different than my personal work, because it has to be. Right? It's not there to have my own personal touch to it. There's very rarely a project where my vision is the only vision that sort of bleeds through. But when it comes to my personal work, it's very important for me to evoke emotion through color. And because my work is oftentimes focused on a subject matter, wildlife conservation, that is very important to me and I feel should be very important to other people, my goal is always and has always been to bridge humans and wildlife conservation through art. Because more often than not, when you try to talk to people who don't know a lot about wildlife conservation efforts around the world, it can be sort of scary and sad, because it is scary and sad out there. What's happening is really not great, and there's not often super good news to share about it. So how do you get people interested who don't want to be depressed by the message? Well, art is a really great avenue for that. And I think that that's the case with anything. Any sort of social movement, anything that you are empowered to speak about, you can say it through art. And for me, the influence really came at a young age. It came from animation. It came from comic books. It came, as I grew older, learning about other artists. It certainly came from music and the artwork that is associated with that music. That sort of blossomed and flowers, starting in the 1930s all the way to the 1960s and 70s, where art and music moved simultaneously. And there was always, sort of this lowbrow type of artwork that followed music as it evolved. And of course, it's still like that now. You hear songs, you hear music, and you can associate visuals with that music that, is artwork. And there are artists everywhere that work on that type of stuff. And that's, visually, aesthetically been a huge influence on me. In addition to the message of making sure that we preserve wildlife and wild places for future generations. I think that I've been successful up to this point in kind of blending those two and finding my own voice visually, and for me that's been one of the great pleasures of working for the Walt Disney Company, is that the company itself has been immensely supportive of that for me. We have a philanthropic branch. We have the Disney Conservation Fund that does that type of work. And I have had opportunities to work with them in the past and do artwork specifically for them that has found its way into the hands of guests, which is just really a great honor. And it's for me something that I'm going to continue to pursue as long as I can, and as long as the company supports it and is jazzed that I'm doing that type of work, then I will be super happy working at the Walt Disney Company, because as much as I'm passionate about creating these incredible experiences, these rides, these parks, these amazing places for guests, I am just as passionate and fulfilled by the work that I do with wildlife.
And it's what you say about like getting people intrigued and involved in a message that might not be so uplifting, especially through your artwork, which I feel like the colors inherently make you feel more uplifted even before you focus on what actually is in the painting, would definitely achieves that goal. And I mean, anyone who follows you on Instagram knows that almost any wildlife photo you draw has a different sort of conservation effort or company that will support usually that animal or something greater than that. So I enjoy looking at it. I've learned about many different conservation efforts because of your account, so I'm sure I am not the only one. The other thing I wanted to speak of with Disney and your artwork, which kind of bridges back to when we were speaking about, you were saying if you're creating a concept design for a land, it's not specifically your style, but you have a lot of clothing designs for Disney that I know isn't specifically your style, but seems to be a little bit more in line, at least like color-wise, and being something that's like bright and poppy. So I just kind of wanted to ask about that whole aspect of what you do in terms of creating these clothing designs. Was that something you wanted to do, or how do you mesh creating artwork basically based on an attraction that already exists and has its theme and look to it already?
Sure. Well, I think with anything, if you are paying tribute to something that people, guests, are super passionate about, like a specific ride, attraction, park, or whatever, and you're depicting that in some way, and you still want to bring your own sensibilities into that design, then you've got to know your subject matter really, really well. So study up on it. And obviously, being a theme park designer, I know the parks really, really well. And so that's not super hard. So it's really all about me being a fan. I'm a fan of these things too. And I'm a fan of the work of my colleagues. And it's fun for me to get to depict them in interesting ways. And then it just happens to show up on garments, which is a fun relationship that I've had over the past several years with Mickey's of Glendale and other partners who worked on merchandise, which has just been absolutely fantastic. And it sort of happened by accident. And oddly enough, it is something that I've always wanted to do. And, maybe someday I'll start my own clothing line, and that would be really, really fun, just, for people who aren't afraid to wear a lot of color. But for, in terms of like these camp shirts and these t-shirts and art prints and stuff like that I've done, that a lot of people have seen at like the D23 Expo, for instance, there's fans of that. And what's absolutely wild to me, totally rad, is that, I've walked all over the world and found people wearing stuff that I designed. And I'm just like, wow, that's super strange. Like walking into Disneyland Paris and turning to my left, like as I was walking through the turnstiles and going like, that guy's wearing a shirt that I made, and I'm in France. That's kind of crazy. It's cool. I mean, I don't really have much to say about it other than, I'm lucky that I get to work on it. And if you look at all of those designs, you could tell they're designed from the heart, because I'm a fan of these things. Like Haunted Mansion, I love, Animal Kingdom, I love. And you look at these designs and you could point at all these tiny little fan person details and be like, okay, yeah. So if you're deep into the mythology of these things, and if you're deep into the backstory behind some of this stuff, there's a lot there beneath the surface. And if you're just, you like how it looks, then even better, because that's the facade on the whole thing. So yeah.
No, but I mean, I'm someone who's very into like backstories and layers of things. That's why I really like the designs you do for clothing and stuff. And I mean, this is me just being curious, because when I was looking through your Instagram, I saw that you were designing lots of like Disney Sea stuff a while ago. Are you a fan of the Disney Sea?
Well, I mean, it is a great opportunity for us as Imagineers to get to work on something that was created specifically for the parks. And what has been put out in the parks up to this point is just brilliant.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of fun. I think it adds additional layers, right, to that onion. You keep peeling back, and there's more and more interesting things. And that's great, especially because guests to the Disney parks come time and time and time again. And if there's always new things for them to discover that are built into a design initially, from the beginning, then, they feel natural. They feel so much a part and ingrained into the environment that nothing feels forced. And it's just like the real world. You discover more and more layers about the community that you live in, and places where you travel to. It's absolutely similar to that. And what's great is that the world has had amazing explorers and will continue to have amazing explorers. And the Society of Explorers and Adventurers continues to live on, and I'm sure there's going to be more adventures.
Oh, I mean, I hope so. I'm obsessed with it. But I just had to ask you about it. Okay, so we were just previously speaking on what it's like to work on something that feels iconic with like the clothing that you've designed. So another project that you were able to work on was the Rivers of America at Disneyland, and I just kind of wanted to know what it was like to work on something that is so iconic to anyone who gets to go to Disneyland. It's something that was there from the beginning. And what is it like to work on something like that? And then what is it like to rework on something like that? And what kind of effort and research needs to go into tackling such a beast almost?
Sure. So, like any project, you need to do all of the research that you would to help you find success, to guide you towards the final answer that ultimately will end up being this experience that people are going to, enjoy for many, many years. And what was unique about the Rivers of America was that it is an original Disneyland attraction. And with that, you must always take the necessary steps in order to do this with love and care and authenticity, and to know that like this is something that Walt imagined. And it's not necessarily sacred, but it's certainly one of those things to revere and to hold up, and to only want to do better, to only plus. You never want to come into an attraction like that and do something that may be harmful to it and harmful to the legacy of that. So I think you know, for me and my involvement on that team, which was full of amazing people, I got to watch that project evolve and develop from sketches and just initial, you know, taking a look at the land and figuring out, you know, what's even possible in that space to, you know, the amazing dimensional designers in our model shop sculpting this incredible geology. And ultimately, you know, for that project, I did so much research to ensure that what was, you know, and the end result was authentic. And I got to work with amazing mentors who pushed me to find success on that project. I made plenty of mistakes on that project, which I learned from, which was great. And you know, one of the things that I really enjoyed about that was the opportunity that I had to go on several road trips around the United States. Thousands and thousands of miles I drove to these different regions of the country to photo document and to make sketches and to take notes and to talk to the people that live there, people who've been there for generations and have told me, you know, what do these landscapes mean to you? Going into you know, tribal reservations and speaking with the local Native Americans there and saying like, okay, is this sacred to you? Like, tell me what this means to you. And having that knowledge and bringing that knowledge back and having it ingrained in the project that it's, you know, itself, it to me makes it even more special than it would have been if we had just said, all right, well, you know, we got to have some rocks and, you know, we'll just kind of put this type of rock there and this type of rock there and it'll look like a river and it'll be pretty and everything like that. But it won't have that Disney magic, that difference, that element of it that really makes it feel true and authentic and whimsical all at the same time. Mm-hmm. So for me, the Rivers of America ended up being a project that found success. And I think that we were able to sort of encapsulate the spirit of that experience and in a really successful way. And it was great working with the Disneyland art directors. And it was great working with our team at Walt Disney Imagineering to really get that project open and in front of guests. And I think that, you know, people really like it, I think.
Of course. And it like you're saying, it has by doing all of this research, it's what makes it inherently Disney and whimsical and magical, because it's based in all of these different realities. And even if someone might not know when they're looking at like the rock work that it was combined from so many hours of research, subconsciously it's from landscapes that lots of people who are visiting the park might be drawn to or have seen in the past. So that I think that's how it kind of bases it more in this reality and makes it believable, and it's what elevates it to what we don't get to see in not all theme parks across the globe, because I mean, Disney just does a great job with making sure that every little detail is matched and counts. So I mean, I enjoy it every time I get to see it. So it's really cool to be speaking to somebody who did the thing that I really like looking at.
Yeah, small part in a large team. It was an amazing group, and you know, I was lucky to be a part of it.
For sure. And I think a lot of people, because obviously you did, like you said, research trips based to be able to create all of just the visuals that were going to be needed. I feel like a lot of people don't think about when they're going into like the Disney parks that it's not just, you might think, I mean, everybody knows, not everybody, but a lot of people know that like Everest, there was obviously research trips based to create that giant attraction. It's not just the big attractions that have that like much amount of detail and attention paid to them. It's like, just like you said, just specific rocks can be like very well researched, take up hours of somebody's time like yourself to be able to create something that is based in reality and makes it more believable for us, like as an audience and guests inside of the park. I mean, like you did lots of rock work and you will continue to do rock work after in your career, but was that a thing for you? Did you know how to do rock work and did you just learn?
No, I really had no experience doing anything with themed finishes, any kind of large to, you know, one-to-one scale sculpting and things like that. I really had very little experience before starting at at Disney, and since starting doing that work, I've learned a lot. It is equal parts a construction trade as well as it is an art, and you have to be this balance between like a production designer and an artisan, and you need to be able to understand the constructability and the materials, and you need to be a subject matter expert in those things in order to manipulate the material and the way that you need it in the field. You have to know, like, oh well, the material is going to dry at this rate, and so I need to sculpt this type of detail now, and half an hour I need to sculpt this type of detail, because you're going to be able to get a different type of push and pull, and the the malleable nature of the material changes over time because it's so dynamic, and that is something that has to be learned. That is not a skill that you're born with. And there are very few people in the world that do that, and even fewer people in the world that do it to the level and the degree that we do. And so I've had incredible mentors who I honestly owe everything to in my career at the Walt Disney Company, not just with the work that I do in themed finishes, but with all of my work, because they recognized talent and passion and drive, and they fostered it. Mm-hmm. And I think that any good leader, not just a manager, but any good leader will do that. They'll recognize talent where they can find it. And even if it's not directed specifically in one way or the other, they know how to guide you to success and how to support you in the way that you need, and give you feedback where you need it too, so that you don't get a big head about how great you are. Being humble and understanding your place in a hierarchical structure of people and experience, then you are going to end up doing really great things if you take it step by step and learn the things that you need to learn in order to get to where you need to be, instead of like jumping and being like, all right, I've never done rock work before and I'm going to go be the expert at that. Yeah, that doesn't happen. You have to take the years to actually end up learning the skill and learning the trade, just like anything else.
But it is interesting just that I'm sure majority of people who do this sort of stuff, and especially at the Walt Disney Company, might have come in like yourself, not ever knowing how, but it's not like a prerequisite of the job to know how to do all of these things before you arrive, but just the willingness and adapt, like the way to learn and being able to adapt to be able to do these new things. Which I feel like people just don't clock that these things that, like you said, you're not born with it. It's not something that you knew right off the bat. It's something that has evolved over your career, and I'm sure will continue to evolve as time goes on.
My hope is that I continue to get better at everything as I get older. I never want to start being terrible at something. That's never a goal. No. But, like you had mentioned, adaptability is a key trait in people who want to come and work in this type of dynamic, line of work. It's project-based, like I said. Everything changes, so you could be working on a fairy tale one day and then be working on some sort of futuristic sci-fi experience the next day or the next year. And you have to be able to turn that switch on and off. You have to be able to ramp up your production and to be able to slow down when there's a lull and still be fulfilled and satisfied in your work, regardless of what the projects call for or what the environment is like. And I think that a lot of people have a tough time doing that. And those who are able to adapt are the ones who find success the quickest, or find success with ease. For me, because I imagine that there's students that watch these videos that you put out. I think that being collaborative, being a sponge, being adaptable, those are three like keystone traits that you need to have. And if you don't have them and you still want to do this, then figure it out. You got to learn, because those things are required for this type of stuff.
Mm-hmm. That makes total sense. And jumping from something that would have been very, like a project that was very research based in reality. I'm gonna pan over to a couple of other things you've done, which are all heavily IP based. And before I go into specific ones, I was just curious to know, is there a difference for you in terms even of research when you're focusing on an attraction or a land that isn't based in technically reality, it's based on an IP, and how does the research kind of shift in that sort of respect? Or are you still basing things on natural landscapes or things that exist in the world today?
Well, I mean, we exist in a reality that people are familiar with. The type of research that you do doesn't change. How you research rarely changes. What you research will always change. But ultimately, you still need to be able to do the research, whether or not you're working on a project that is inspired by a film or a book or a TV show or something completely new. You really have to be able to do the same amount and the same kind of research, or research things to the same degree, regardless. It's not like it's all of a sudden easier because there was a movie that told you how to do things. A film is a film, and what you're really seeing is, an illusion through motion. What we're building is real life. There's no camera point of view that you're looking at things through. People can turn 360 degrees and look behind stuff, and you got to be able to design all of that in the built environment, in a real space, and design it in a way that it's going to stand the test of time. It's going to, stand up to people touching it, or to a trash can scraping up against it, or, somebody spilling their ice cream on the ground. Like you got to be able to design for all of those things, whether it's based off of an intellectual property or not.
And I think one of the most successful lands that you would have worked on, at least in terms of, I remember the first time that, which I'm speaking about Pandora, the first time that I ever walked into Pandora was, I think the first time I was like, Disney always has amazed me since I was a child, but I think walking into that land, I was very taken aback by the amount of detail. For some reason, for me, it was the most immersive Disneyland I had entered in up to that point. So I just kind of wanted to know what you worked on in that land, and was there something that made it feel this way for so many other people? Because I know I'm not the only person to have been like gobsmacked by Pandora the first time you like slowly make your way in there, and then you're like in the land and you feel like you're in another place.
Yeah. Well, the amazing thing about Pandora, the world of Avatar, is that it was really a learning experience for me. It was one of the projects where I got to dive deep into many different processes and see how really truly things worked from multiple viewpoints. I got to work with people who are a part of trades that I am not normally a part of, and I got to work with them very closely. I got to dabble a lot, which was a lot of fun. Primarily, my role was to work with the Themed Finishes art studio, that team that designed all of the rock work and character facade and hardscape and artificial foliage and all of the amazing textures and really the icons of the land that you see when you're in there. But I mean, I also got to go to Lightstorm and work with that team there, and work closely with specifically the Avatar property, and that was really, really interesting. That was the first time in my career that I've ever done that, gone specifically to a movie studio to work closely with the team there that produced the source material. That was a lot of fun, and ultimately a lot of the work that I did on that land never even made it. That happens often, really, really often. My first job at Imagineering was working in the Blue Sky studio, where almost nothing that you do gets made. It's really all about coming up with amazing ideas that later on influence other things. But that's just how it goes in this type of business, is that a lot of stuff that you design or you could spend a lot of time on, it just doesn't make it. But that doesn't mean that it won't get used someday, or just be one step in the evolutionary process of an attraction or an idea. Now, when it comes to what actually made it, for Pandora, when you walk through that land, you literally, not literally, but you really do step foot on another planet. And part of what makes that believable is knowing that it's inhabited. It's inhabited by the Na'vi. It's inhabited by all these amazing creatures that live there, big and small. And you believe that because you hear them. You see the land pulsating around you, especially at night with all of the bioluminescence that's there. And you look around and you see creature tracks in the ground, and you can tell a story of, well, there was a hexapede that crossed this pathway over here, and you can follow the tracks all the way up to this point where a Thanator has come, and then all of a sudden that prey animal tracks, they disappear, and the predatory tracks just keep going. You're like, something happened there. And that's a lot of what I worked on, was telling those stories in the land, making the land feel inhabited. And to me, it's the cherry on top of that type of experience. It's really the extra layers of believability that you don't quite notice on the first visit or the second or third visit, but by golly, the time you visit it for like the fifth time, you're like, wow, look at all this stuff, and so I personally don't like to design for the first visit. I wanted to design for the 20th visit. And for me, getting to do all of the placemaking in that land in the way that I did, working on a larger scale with the theme finishes team on Rockwork and helping them with those efforts, but then also working with the design team and making sure that the narrative elements, particularly related to wildlife, got into the land. That was really special for me because, again, like, even though it's all fictional wildlife, it still blends together things that I'm really, really interested in. And so for me, I credit that project and that project team with helping me really just gain more skills than I had coming into that project, in a degree that is just far surpassed that any other project that I've worked on. I think that's a project where I learned probably the most from when I went into it to when I came out of it.
And I think, like you were saying, it's designed for like the revisibility. That's not a word, but the
Sure.
the revisibility or the ability to revisit that land only gets greater over time, because the first time I went, I didn't notice the ground and everything that was on the ground and the way that things looked weathered. I might have noticed it, but I think it was just subconscious because you're just kind of looking at like the greater picture as a whole. But over now the years of constantly going back, I've noticed so many more details. You talking about that there are these like the animal tracks on the ground. Now my first thought is like, when can I go back so I could stare at them and find out what the story is? And I think that part is what makes that land so amazing, and I'm very glad that you mentioned that, because I'm personally gonna go and do it.
Sweet. Yeah, I mean, it's it's incredible to be able to work on a project where the surface elements, the stuff that people take pictures of, right? That's what you get to work on, and so you literally see your work all the time, because it comes through your social media feeds or wherever. And of course, there's great fulfillment in working on the stuff that people don't see, because it's like the mechanical magic behind everything that makes it all work and operate. And I've worked on plenty of that stuff, but I kind of love looking at this wall that I helped paint or sculpt or design or whatever, and being like, that one was one of mine. That's a lot of fun.
Of course, and it's there, like you said, it's something that is going to stand the test of time, and you'll be able to see it every time. So another big land that you're working on that everyone's very excited to see open is, of course, the Avengers Campus. And I kind of just wanted to know what it's been like for you to work on it, especially as someone who is loves like the comic book world. It seems very up in your element and in your like wheelhouse. So what has that been like for you, for whatever you can tell us, because I know it's not yet officially open, even though we are very excited to see when that day comes.
Well, the amazing thing about Avengers Campus is that it is going to be a land for people who love comics like I do, who loves, the Marvel Studios films like I do. And it's also going to be for people who've never read a comic book or seen any of those films ever before in their life. It's an optimistic space where people can be inspired to invent and create and to really be their own hero and learn about the hero that's inside of everyone. That is that's, to me, I think the most special part of the land is that it really is going to be empowering for the people who go there, more than just amazing to look at, more than just really fun to experience, everything that the land has to offer. But, I firmly believe that the people who go to Avengers Campus and who leave it are going to leave empowered to become their own hero in their own way, whether they have superhero powers or not. And my role on the project is significant for me. I'm the field art director for pretty much all of the surfaces that you can see and touch and things like that. All of the theme finishes, the rockwork, character facade, hardscape, all of that stuff. And I have spent a lot of time researching for this project, going to into great detail regarding architecture and making sure that this land is going to be as authentic as possible and have as much character as possible. It's going to be really sophisticated in terms of how all of that looks. If people are used to seeing these same levels of design and beauty and aging or decay or anything like that, in the real world, you're going to see that tenfold in this land. And so, without saying much, because, we haven't announced a whole lot and the land's not open yet, and I don't want to blow any amazing surprises. It's going to be incredible. And certainly if you're a fan of Marvel, it's just going to be the most incredible place that you've ever seen.
Which, I mean, the thing that excites me the most is this idea of like when you leave, it will carry a feeling with you, like sort of like some sort of an inspirational thing, which is what is making me very excited to see the land, just because that's the best thing about seeing, especially a lot of the new lands that Disney's been creating, is that you walk in and you leave and it has a lasting effect on you. I mean, I'm sure Avengers Campus will be nothing less than that, especially, I mean, it's superheroes. How can they not inspire you to be better, do better, create a world that is better? So, I mean, I'm very excited to see that, and it will be, everyone's going to love it. A couple other things, lands that I wanted to ask you about was Zootopia and Frozen. So on your Instagram, I noticed that you posted the Zootopia seal that you designed, and in your description, which, I mean, you guys check it out if you want to see the entire thing, but it has so many layers, and I was just wondering, was that your idea to kind of pull from wildlife? Of course, that's something that is inherently important to you, and was that a choice on your end? Was that something that was, because I mean it is an animal-based land, it just, I guess, lent itself to that as well, but was that more a you thing, or was it kind of, were you asked to kind of do that sort of design?
Imagineers get cast on projects, and they are usually asked to work on projects where their leadership thinks that they will be the most successful. And, of course, my leadership, knowing me fairly well, knew that Zootopia would be a good fit for me. And I love that film. And I am so proud of the work that I was able to do on that. And with the incredible talent on that team, and working here in the United States and also working in China, in Shanghai, and collaborating between the two teams, and the the nature of the film being what it is, it was important for me to ingrain in an icon of the land, a visual graphic icon of the land, which is the city seal that you're talking about. I won't dive too much into it, because if you want to read about it, you can go on Instagram and read about it. But for me and that project, without a doubt, there is this sensibility that the world is better because of the diversity of its residents. And I think that is ingrained in the film. It's certainly going to be ingrained in the land. It's something that I believe strongly in personally, and take that with the wildlife aspect of it and my work in wildlife conservation. You're going to find depictions of animals in that land that are going to those are decisions that were made specifically because of conservation reasoning, things that I'm passionate about. And of course, it's all, in service to the land and to the film as the source material. And, not much has been released about the land, and I can't really talk about it all that much, but I think that when people go and visit it eventually, when it opens, they are going to understand that this land is a celebration of the differences of all of these different mammals and the amazing superpowers that each one of them has, and the diversity between predator and prey animals, and all of these different attributes that, make them distinct species work in harmony together. And there's a real feeling of balance in that land. Working on the placemaking, the character facade work, designing the land itself was, my responsibility. And, working with our creative director, who's such an amazing person, and gave me all the freedom that I could have ever wanted to come up with something amazing. I think that, people are going to be just blown away by how incredible it is.
I'm sure they are. I'm very excited. I mean, I probably won't see it for a while because would have to get to that part, but it seems lovely, and I'm very excited to see it. I mean, even if it's just going to be through someone vlogging it. But did you do the same sort of thing for Frozen as well? Like you were saying, creating the facades of stuff, or just designing the lands, and what were you kind of involved with for the Frozen side of that land?
Sure. Well, I mean, a lot more has been said about the Frozen expansion in Hong Kong. It's going to be, first of all, a ton of fun. And, I specifically worked on one half of the land, and the roller coaster attraction that's going there. And again, I can't say much about it other than, I approached it with the same amount of research that I do with anything else, because you are looking at a source material, the Frozen films, that, are steeped in a reality that, while fantasy is derived specifically from regions and cultures of our, of the earth, that you can pull a lot of, research from. I did, I can't tell you how many like pictures of Stabor houses I've looked at, like these ancient Norwegian wooden structures and things. It was an incredibly fun project to work on from that point of view, because there was so much to be learned, I think, and there's a lot to be learned on every project, but ultimately that Frozen project is going to be, I think, without a doubt, a celebration of the film, and it's going to be directly pointed at anyone who just loves Frozen, and anyone who has never seen Frozen is going to go to that land and certainly want to watch the film, and they're just going to be taken back by how much care and love and detail has been put into this by that team. Again, the creative director for that project has a proven track record of doing this type of stuff just really amazingly, and he gave me the opportunity to plus it and to add to it, and I'm certainly appreciative for that, and I can't wait for guests to come and see it.
Yeah, I mean, just that idea of you being able to add to it is what I think makes Disney fans so excited about visiting any new land is when you know, like especially any land that's based on an intellectual property, you kind of know what you know what it is from the film, but when you actually get to go into it, it's something you kind of referenced already. You could, like, you're not just looking at it head on, you can look around something or look behind something or go right up to a house and look at the wood that it is made out of, and it makes you feel like you are 10 times more in the story than you may have felt. Not that you can't feel that way with the movie, but when you're literally in there, it's just an added layer to the experience. So I mean, I'm excited, everybody's excited. I don't think I need to convince anyone on that one. And I'll put in a photo now. I just was kind of curious to know your office. That seems insane to me, like in all of the best ways. It's like psychedelic and comic books and memorabilia and like a retro TV. Is that your office at home or like at Imagineering, or
Yeah, so
what is that thing?
What you're describing right now is my office in Glendale.
Mm-hmm.
My office in Glendale at the Walt Disney Imagineering Campus is certainly a really fun place. I've got two offices. I've got that field office on the construction site, which is just a little cubicle. Well, I mean, and I've got my home office, which looks very similar to my office at Walt Disney Imagineering. I mean, it's a imaginative space. It's an inspiring space. It's a space where I feel comfortable and at home and creative. If I didn't have that, I don't think I'd be as productive as I am. You know, I'm the type of person who needs to be sort of encased and surrounded by the stuff that causes me to think and be inspired and motivates me to work. And so I cultivate a space around me, and I curate, my environment to be really a creative incubator. And that's essentially, the manifestation of I think like every aspect of me. I just fill it with all the stuff that I totally dig and the things that inspire me. And I switch it up from time to time and move things around. And, it's a fun, creative space that, people at work like stopping by.
Yeah.
Like people who've never seen it before, they're like, what? Yes. Yeah. It's pretty fun. There's something in there for everyone.
Looks like it's literally like a museum almost from what I've seen. Looks amazing. Is there anything in there that's like, I mean, I'm sure many things are, but is there like a piece of memorabilia in there that you would like never want to give away or swap out?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's very important things in there, without a doubt. There's little mementos from my career there. I think almost every Imagineer has those, little parts of projects, that they've worked on. Those are little memories that, show your track record throughout your career. You're like, that person has this, they've worked on that. This person has this, they've worked on that. You can tell sort of, it's like fingerprints. You can tell, somebody and what they've done kind of by the little tchotchkes that they have in their office. And for me, it's not always stuff from Disney. There's other things there. I was a teacher for a really long time. I've got my little name tag from when I was a teacher there, and that's in my office, and I keep that with me just to, help me understand and remind me of what's important. It's, you're always working for yourself and for the people around you, but you're without a doubt working for the next generation to come. The work that I'm doing may last longer than I do. So you need to make sure that you do impeccable work for the folks down the line.
And my last question for you, which is, it leads itself to what this series is called, which is How to Become an Imagineer. And you've been dropping things throughout this entire conversation that I think people would have picked up on by now. But if you were just going to kind of sum it up, what would be your like pearls of wisdom to anyone who's not just looking to do Imagineering or just theme park design as a whole, because there is various opportunities at many companies, but I mean, what would your kind of advice be for people looking to come down this path?
there's a few things that I always tell students, usually, who are interested in this type of work. And first of all, it's you got to be able to do the research. You got to be able to learn things. I'm not a fan of going into an experience, whether it's a trip or a meeting or or a project or anything like that, and being the guy who's like, like, well, what do you know? Like, I don't want to be that guy. I want to be the person who doesn't know everything, who can certainly learn from a project, but goes in with a really solid understanding of what I'm doing. And I think that people who know how to do that, who know how to do the cursory research prior to whatever you're going to end up getting involved in, that's a really important trait. And then that, of course, carries into the deep research once you actually get there. And not just doing it because you have to do it, but doing it because it interests you. You have to want to learn and to know things, and you need to be able to put in the time to do that. Another thing that I think is super important is I see a lot of kids coming in and not being humble about who they are and what their experience is. And you very well could have been a big fish in a small pond, but now you're a cog in a very large machine, potentially, and you need to act as such. And I think that the young people who come into this with the goal of learning as much as they can and growing as much as they can, and understanding why they want to be an Imagineer, and not wanting to be an Imagineer just so they can be an Imagineer, just for the sake of it, just for the title of it. That's not anything that I have any patience for, and very few people that I know are going to have patience for it either. Another thing that I think is important is being uniquely you. And even if you're a generalist, that's fine. All right. There's room for people who have several different skill sets, but you got to get your foot in the door somehow. And so I think that you need to focus particularly on the thing that's going to get you in there, whatever that may be. It's not up for me to decide. It's up for you to find that passion and for you to pursue that. And all that extra stuff is going to help you. All the other things that you're good at, and even things that you may not think are relevant. I always, always, always tell people to wear the weird on the outside. Whatever that weird thing is about you that you're like, I'm super great at underwater basket weaving. Wow. Do it, man. Like, yeah, tell people that. Don't just, that's an actual major at UC Davis, by the way.
Oh my gosh.
Or class, I think. Don't just hold that in and have it only come out in, casual conversation. Like, no, man. For me, the wildlife conservation stuff and my colorful artwork and all these other things, they don't necessarily pertain to my job, but believe it or not, I've gotten a lot of opportunity because I've been very forward and open about the stuff that I am interested in and passionate about, and so you never know. It could be that one weird thing that gets you your breakthrough shot. You never know. So never hide who you are. Always be open about that. And lastly, take every single opportunity and every single piece of advice to heart. If you are given a shot, take the shot. Don't be afraid to fail. Fear of failure is the biggest barrier that I see from my young students all the way up to the people I'm mentoring now. Fear of failure is without a doubt the biggest, most detrimental thing that can affect you as a professional. As long as you get over that fear of failure and realizing that you're going to make so many mistakes and you're going to learn from them, I can name mistakes that I have made on every single solitary project I've done at Disney and every single thing I've done really anywhere else. All right. And you just gotta let it roll off of you. Don't let it bother you. Learn from it, right? Let it upset you for a reasonable amount of time, and and only if that motivates you. So I think that those things all kept in mind are going to help anyone find success. And then, of course, specifically with relation to Walt Disney Imagineering, there are things like the Disney's Dreamers Academy for people who are in high school. There is the Imaginations Design Competition, which we had already spoken about. There's other things too. Walt Disney Imagineering is a big proponent of the Themed Entertainment Association, and they have a next gen program there that helps bring people up in the industry, young people, college students. Get involved in that. Go to the IAPA Expo in Orlando at least once, just to kind of see what it's about. Network, talk to as many people as you possibly can, because this industry is about people. We design things for people. You work closely with people, and you need to know people to get anywhere and to do anything. And we're certainly going to reach out to the people that we enjoy spending time with first. So it's important to do networking. And I mean, if all of those things are kept in mind and you're diligent and you work hard, there's no reason anyone can't reach this level, reach to the highest level in whatever your goal is, whether it's Walt Disney Imagineering and theme park design, or baking or architecture, or it doesn't matter really what it is. I think that all of those things should be kept in mind for anyone who's interested in finding success.
Well, I mean, that was a great answer. I feel like I was very captivated that whole time. I could listen to you talk even longer about what your advice would be for people who, because I think like you said, you narrowed it down to in Imagineering, but that could be taken to so many other creative professions specifically as a whole, which I think is very interesting. But huge thank you for letting me talk to you today, and for talking about what you do for the company, just your talents, and everything that you've taught everybody who's listening today, tomorrow, 10 years from now. But thank you. Just a million thank yous is basically what I'm saying. But I really appreciate it, and I've had a great chat with you, and I've definitely learned a lot more that I didn't know before, which is what's been so great about doing these things, is that I think I know something, and then I literally knew nothing, and now I know another big chunk, and putting a lot of pieces together, which is I'm glad you're another person who can add to whatever this story is.
Well, it was my pleasure. I was happy to talk, and I hope that there are people out there who are going to watch this and hopefully find it informative, and will be inspired to pursue a career in theme park design.
Okay, well, I feel like I always forget to do an outro when I do these videos, but I mean, if you enjoy this sort of stuff, make sure that you're subscribed to the channel, that you give the video a nice big thumbs up, comment down below what you thought, and until next time, folks, I will see you all real soon. Bye, everyone.